Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Well, it's time for another market update where we will talk about how volumes, rejections, diesel prices, capacity, how all of that has changed week over week. And then we look at the spot market for dry vans, reefers, and flatbeds. And at the end of this video, I again want to talk about data versus experience to see if the data kind of coincides with what it's actually like working in the trucking industry. Ready? Let's go! All right, as always, all the charts will be attached right here, and we're starting with the net change in MC numbers, how many MCs were created versus how many were deactivated. So week over week, we lost about 495 MC numbers or carriers net. Now, in terms of spot versus contract rates, how much more do contract carriers get paid than spot carriers? As you can see, the higher the line is, the smaller the margin between contract and spot carriers. And currently, contract carriers are earning about 42 cents per mile more than those spot carriers. On to tender rejections. What is the level of rejection right now? The green line is 2024 and the blue line is us in 2025. In terms of rejections, we see that we have been trending higher than we were in 2024, but the rejections are slowly starting to go down. Currently, the average rejection rate is 7.08%. The question is, what is happening with the general volume in the freight market for all equipment types? Well, unfortunately, volumes have been trending below 2024 levels, although unlike rejections, they are on their way up. Finally, we have our diesel prices, which have been below 2024 levels during this time last year. However, they were climbing up until recently. Now, diesel prices are around $3.70 per gallon on average, according to truck stops across the US. Now let's talk about the spot market conditions, and we're going to start with dry vans. These are tables I make myself using data from FTR Intel. So as you can see, everything is red, unfortunately, week over week, and we're comparing the week ending on January 17th to the week ending on January 24th. So week over week, dry vans saw a 3 cent per mile decrease in spot rates on average. Those rates are 2% lower than this time last year. In terms of volumes, dry vans lost about 17% of volumes week over week, so there are less loads on the spot market, and year over year, volumes are 22% lower than this time last year. So the question now is, where are the relatively better areas for dry vans? And in order to figure that out, for those who are new, I use sonar charts in order to figure out where the volumes and rejections are the highest in the general market to see which areas have more loads flowing to the spot market. For dry vans, those areas are Green Bay, Wisconsin, Columbus, Ohio, Atlanta, Georgia, Kansas City, Missouri, and Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, on sonar, you also have the ability to see whether those particular rates see increasing or decreasing outbound spot rates. So loads going from those areas, are they paying more or are they paying less on the spot market? And as you can see, all 5 places, even though those are the places that get relatively more volume from the general market, all of those outbound spot rates are decreasing right now. And this has to do with the fact that even though those 5 areas are the better ones, the rejections are on their way down. Now, in terms of truck availability, everything has pretty much limited truck availability except for Atlanta, Georgia, which has excess truck availability. All right, now the same thing just for reefers on the spot market. Week over week, Reefer saw an 11 cent per mile decrease, unfortunately, and rates year over year on the spot market are 7.5% lower. Now, volume-wise, Reefers lost about 9% of their volume on the spot market week over week, and year over year, volumes are down 28%. So again, question, where are the relatively better areas for Reefers? Those are Joplin, Missouri, Joliet, Illinois, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Chicago, Illinois, and Allentown, Pennsylvania. But just like with dry vans, all of these 5 market areas are seeing decreasing outbound spot rates. Now, in terms of truck availability, Joplin, Missouri has limited availability, and Allentown, Pennsylvania has excess truck capacity. Everything else is moderate. So, this is starting to seem like what we saw in January, especially in the beginning of January, the fact that the rates started going up. What we saw had to do partially with the fact that we were getting out of the holiday season. So there was some kind of spillover effect. And number 2 is the weather and the fact that capacity did decrease momentarily just for the time being because of the weather. All right, let's talk about flatbeds now. And flatbeds on the spot market actually saw no change in the rate per mile. Year over year, however, rates are down 5%, and volumes week over week saw the same exact decrease as dry vans, 17.2% down. So less volume, but year over year, volumes are about 2% higher for flatbeds on the spot market. Now, in order to figure out the better areas for flatbeds, as always, I make my own maps using truck stop data. We're going to start with loads. The darker an area is, the more loads come out of that area. Nothing really changes here. It's always pretty much the same. The south and the eastern portion. If we cut the United States map in half, the eastern portion of the US is where the loads are at, as well as California and maybe sometimes the Pacific Northwest. Now, capacity-wise, again, the darker an area, the more flatbeds in that area. Capacity-wise, most of the time trucks follow the loads, right? There are sometimes areas like Oregon, which might have more loads, but there are not enough trucks. This has to do with the fact that sometimes there are not enough loads going to that area, right? This also has to do with the fact that Oregon is one of those places where brokers post one load 100 different times, which increases the volume on the load board. But yeah, capacity follows the loads for the most part. So now we have to figure out the load to truck ratios. Anything burgundy red like Texas, this is severe overcapacity. There's less than half a load per truck. Anything red like Kansas, California, Nevada, this is still overcapacity, just not as severe as Texas, for example, but there's still less than a load per truck. Orange, like Idaho and Montana, for example, this is more or less equilibrium. There's between 1 to 1.5 loads per truck. However, be careful. This is truck stop data, so it might be just because there are loads that are posted many different times, like one load. Anything yellow, which is like Michigan, Ohio, this is slight under capacity, about 1.5 to 2 loads per truck. Green, which is Washington and Arkansas only, this is under capacity, 2 to 3 loads per truck. And the blue areas, Oregon, Louisiana, these are moderate under capacity areas where there are between 3 to 10 loads per truck. It seems like there are more moderate under capacity areas than there used to be. There are no severe under capacity areas. Before it was Oregon, I believe, and Washington that were severely lacking trucks, and Mississippi. There are no such areas anymore, but yeah, it is what it is. So now on to data versus experience. Well, for January as a whole, if we look at the month, the data and the experience are similar. This month, at least for us, and I'm judging by our numbers, it started off pretty good with better rates, and then those rates slowly started declining starting around January 11th. And while I would say that we had a more or less decent month, my business partner brought up something that is very true. The efficiency is not what it used to be. In order to make decent money right now, you have to work like a crazy person, especially if you're the one who is behind the wheel. With dispatching, it's a little bit different. Booking loads, I would argue, is still easier than it was a couple of months ago. There is always something to choose from, and the negotiations are not as challenging. But something that I have realized is in order to really make money, you have to focus on those one-day loads that pay a better rate per mile, and we're a flatbed carrier. And having flatbeds on 1 day loads is not easy, to say the least, because tarping, untarping, chaining, strapping, all of those things, they take time. So what do we want to see ideally? We want to see a market that actually pays a fair rate for the work performed. Currently, we have a market that pays more or less okay if you are ready to work nonstop, and severely underpays if you're looking to work like a normal human being. This is what a lack of efficiency looks like. So, are there opportunities? Yeah, there are opportunities, but we go back to the question: is the money that you receive at the end of the week, month, whatever, is the money that you receive actually worth the work you are performing? And that is a big one. What about you guys? How do you feel January went for you? Anyway, wishing you all a fantastic rest of your week and weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.